Hi. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on which part of the world you're logging in from. I'm Ajay, happy to host this session with the winners of the America Business Award. Uh, Congratulations to all of you, John, Todd, Yanni, for the recognition. It's truly well deserved. I wanted to, before we go further, I think I want to spend a few seconds making sure that you get a chance to introduce yourself. So, John, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Good morning. Good afternoon. John Murata. I'm the CEO of PHC Group. PHC Group is a global healthcare, medical device, and life sciences company. We are 10,000 employees strong. We're headquartered out of Tokyo, Japan, private equity owned, and we're in over 125 countries with $3 billion US dollars of top line revenue. We are in various businesses from diabetes to cancer diagnostics to lab equipment, our lab equipment business, electronic medical records, and a reference lab clinical testing business as well. So it's good to be here, Ajay, and thank you so much for including PHC in today's session.
Fantastic. Todd, over to you.
Thank you. Todd Putnam, CIO at Tronox, and Tronox is a titanium dioxide manufacturer, which is white powder used primarily in paints and coatings. And we operate on 6 different continents, have an integrated business, and are just thrilled to be here today and look forward to the discussion. Thanks, Ajay.
And if anybody needs white powder, they can contact Todd. So, Yanni, over to you.
Thank you, AJ, and thanks to HCL for sponsoring this, and congratulations to John and Todd as well. Yanni Charalambous, I'm with Occidental. Occidental is an upstream oil and gas, chemicals, midstream, and most recently a low carbon ventures company. Tremendous amount of investments in direct air capture and sequestration. I am the vice president and CIO of Occidental, and I've been with the company now close to 20 years.
Fantastic, Yanni, and welcome to all of you. Again, a quick introduction from me. I'm Ajay. I'm the executive vice president, and I head what is known as the Mega LT verticals for HCL, based here out of Dallas. Happy to host this session and moderate some questions that I wanted to ask you about some key directions the industry is taking. I would just like to start by talking about 2021. We clearly know that the last year was dominated by discussions around the new normal. We are now getting back to office. A lot of us, the world around us is opening up. I did want to understand from you what you thought that meant for business. What is the single biggest change that in your mind is going to be what you'll see in the post-pandemic world, and how your company, how you personally would be adapting to it?
Thank you. I believe, this is what I would call an imprintable moment in regards to where we stand with the pandemic, right? A lot of companies, just like Occidental, I believe they're in the process of either returning to the office or started that process. For us, we began a hybrid model in regards to coming back to the office, 3 days in the office, 2 days work from home. And this is what I mean by an imprintable moment. This is a good moment for any company that's looking to make a change and have that change be considered and adopted by the employees of the company. It's having lived through the pandemic and working remotely, and now having the opportunity to re-engage and bring the staff together back in the office, I believe creates an opportunity for change. Certainly, the experience we had through the pandemic has demonstrated that information technology and digitization can really and truly enable a company to function well. What I believe there is an opportunity here to utilize that technology and then improve it even further by strengthening the experience that employees and staff have when they return to the office. And so employee, basically what you learn through the pandemic and working remotely, along with having the face-to-face and interaction that occurs throughout the experience coming into the office and being able to have conversations and interact and collaborate and innovate upon things. So that's my 2 cents, I guess, contribution in that regard.
Yeah, I think, Ajay, it's interesting because 2020 was an interesting year for all of us, both personally and professionally. And when you bring those dynamics back into the workplace, I think one of the things that stuck out for us was adaptability. If you look at, we have a global footprint, and anywhere we went, people were adapting no matter where they were in the world. Whether that was in our personal life and what we experienced in going into restaurants or takeout, how we were paying for products and services, it was an acceleration in technology. We're really taking advantage of that in our businesses, especially around, most of our businesses are business to business. We have a bit of a B2C component in one of our businesses. And so we're really looking at more investments in terms of how we digitize, how we get to our customers in a manner that maybe we didn't have that ability or understanding that we could do in the past. And so using that inflection point, which is a global pandemic, hopefully we won't have to experience another one of those, to have another inflection point to accelerate some of the digital tools that we've all been trying to use in the past. But I think that's kind of one component to this. The second one, and Yanni brought this up, is what is this return to work? Occidental's done a nice job in terms of 3 days in and 2 days out. We've got various models that we're looking at and testing throughout the world, in Japan, in the US, and in Europe, as well as some other parts of the world. We're going to figure out where we land here. I think in general, people want a little flexibility with that. We all were used to being at home. Yes, our kids were running around. Yes, there were some distractions, but there was a charm to that too, where the charm was you were invited into your coworkers' homes every single day. You were introduced to their family members and those interruptions, and it actually brought us a lot closer, because sometimes you just don't take the time to have those discussions. So there was a charm to that, and we've got to figure out what the right balance is going forward here. More to come. I mean, we're learning our way through that, but I think we're seeing a lot of our U.S. associates start to come back to work, and then we're bringing some more back in Europe right now as well. So.
No, actually, very well said, John. I think people work with people, and I think to Yanni's point, yes, we are all getting back to work, but we need to work in a way, shape, and form which is different going forward. That's really the new normal that we're all getting to. So, Todd, what do you think?
I'm going to pick up on that theme of an inflection point. And I'm going to go into 21, where John had the charm in 2020. In 2021, it's more the grind and the tiredness that everybody has with how we operate today. And I think the inflection point that we're going to look back at, very much like previous generations said, where were you when Kennedy was shot? Where were you in 9/11? We're going to look back and say, where were you during the pandemic? What did you do? And I think this is going to bring about the largest change this society has seen, certainly in my lifetime. And I think you see people changing houses. You see people changing their vacation patterns. You see people changing jobs, which is going to come up later when we talk about the job market. So much is changing right now that adaptability in our businesses are going to be the hallmark of who succeeds and how we excel during this period. If we give people the right tools in the right environment, and we have our transformation program focus on how to help people work flexibly and dynamically, that's going to be what's going to distinguish the businesses that succeed during this period. It's change. Get used to it. It's here to stay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think we can't underestimate the change that has actually come to us. I know we're talking about it from a work perspective that all of us have experienced, and what that might mean for us. I think a very big change it will also be for the people who are just coming out of schools and colleges, right? And they're going to their next first big one, and they're used to a very different. I would say that the last year would have been very, very different, and the expectation of what can work remote is also very, very different. So I think we all have to adapt to that. Given that that's one of the audience that we have in mind for this dialogue, I want to come back to one area where you talk a little about your success. You've been all very successful people in your in your lives, and I think one of the things that I would really want to encourage you to share are some of the secret sauces of your success. So when you look at it, right, it's usually said that the success and failure are the sides of the same coin. So, from your perspective, how do you deal with success and failure? In what ways do success and failures overlap in the mold that made you a leader in the first place?
So to touch on that, I guess, in general, most people celebrate success, right? And it's sort of what everybody obviously looks for and aspires to and tries throughout their career to be successful. But for me, what was the most impactful and most where I've learned the most, and I was basically uncomfortable in it's when I had a failure. And the biggest insight for me was stopping and thinking about what caused it, right, and learning from it. Same thing for us. What was the critical component of what happened that made it a success? Not just celebrating and saying, yeah, great job, and move on to the next thing, but also taking a moment and reflecting back on both the success and the failures and understanding what went well, what didn't go so well, and what can you do to improve that in the next experience or next project or next challenge that you find yourself in. So, and when it comes to the largest contribution to a success for me was always, you can never be successful on your own, and you always have to surround yourself with people that basically add to your gaps, the areas where you find yourself not being. For me, I'm a very optimistic person. I always surrounded myself with others that looked at things from the other side. They were somewhat pessimistic, so they will bring things up that I would have never thought about because of the fact that I'm always optimistic about the outcome. And by having that second thought, that diversity of thought, if you will, allowed me to view and understand a problem or a situation differently and adapt to it. And so teaming and having a good, surrounding yourself with people that you can work with and they can challenge you and allow them to challenge you can definitely contribute both on the success side and the learnings that you get from the failure side.
Fantastic. I totally agree with that, Yanni. Great thoughts.
Yeah, Ajay, it's a good question. First and foremost, we only learn from our failures. You typically do not learn from your successes, at least in my personal experience. But I've also seen this in teams where the successes are actually fleeting, but the failures are what we try and celebrate in PHC. We're defined by our problems. We actually have a problem-solving process where we unpack those problems. Depending on the complexity, the team can unpack them together. I want people to make mistakes because that means they made a decision. And none of us have perfect information where we can make the right decision at all periods, at all points of time. It's a batting average. Did you make more right ones or optimal ones than the wrong or less optimal? And so how do you create that environment in an organization where failure's fine? I mean, you hear this fail fast type of thing. I think we have to be careful with that. I think you have to be very sharp in terms of allowing people to be empowered to make decisions. If it's higher risk, do that in an environment where you've got competing views. To Yanni's point, you have to have those competing views. If you don't have those competing views, the probability of you making the right decision is probably not where it needs to be in the organization. So I like when people come in, they say, hey, listen, John, I've screwed up. Here's what I need to go do to fix it. And I say, great, go do it. But those high risk decisions where they're going to crash the plane, we call them, they could crash the plane. You got to bring those in. We need to have conversations around that so we understand the downside and the upside of that. When it goes back to, at the end of the day, I think Yanni brought it up, as leaders, we're defined by our teams. And do you have the right team, the right skill sets that you hire your weaknesses? I learned that early on, that you've got to hire your weaknesses in. That actually is really a key contributor to the success of the businesses I've been in. But as a leader, you've got to be vulnerable in understanding where your weaknesses are. And those that don't self-reflect and understand where that is, I don't think they're going to enjoy the successes that they really could in an organization.
That's very, very well said, John. I think it's interesting how failures have to be encouraged to a point if you want to see success in the future. So absolutely a great point. And we want to, I think the important one there is, how do you make sure that you don't get into a situation where you've given a person enough rope to hang himself, right? So I think it has to be measured, and your example around not crashing the aircraft is a good one. We have to have some management and boundary conditions, etc., on how we do that. Todd, what do you think?
Similar thoughts. Personally, some of my greatest spectacular failures are the places where I learn, because you know what you do wrong and you can self-reflect on it, as John said, and learn how you can go forward from that point. And I look back at my career and some of the amazing successes you almost forget about. It's the failures that you remember and that you adjust your behavior as a result of it. Without that, we don't learn, and that learning cycle is so important to help yourself personally, but also the organizations that we lead, and probably equally importantly, the people that we lead, because we want them to come along on that journey. We want them to take risks. We want them to learn and continue to develop themselves. And I like that concept of hiring your opposites and kind of filling gaps. It really is a key concept at Tronox for our diversity of having a diverse organization, and that helps to create a more complete team when everybody's pitching in at a different levels. But probably the most important way to think about this is you don't want those failures to stop you from taking risks going forward. And especially when you go through large things like transformation programs, like what we're in the middle of at Tronox, we've got to take those risks, and we've got to maybe not fail fast, but adjust if we realize that it's not working appropriately. So don't let those failures, and sometimes very public, and some of my past failures, you don't want those failures to overshadow and slow you down. You've got to be willing to keep taking risks, keep learning, and keep adjusting. Otherwise, you'll stagnate.
Agree, absolutely. And another very important role that some of us play, which is that of a mentor. Clearly, you would be a mentor for many people today. But I would want to also understand, what role have mentors played in your own life? And in your current role, how do you approach the mentees that you have? And how do you create a relationship that lasts for a long time? Because I think that's important between a mentor and a mentee.
So I'll jump in. Yeah. So I get this question from typically the early career folks that we hire on board. Right? They are hungry for a mentor. They are looking for one. They believe that's going to make a difference in their life, and I couldn't agree more with them. My advice, and this is based on my experience to them, is, I can easily assign a mentor to them, but in my mind and in my view, that may not work out. I believe a mentor needs to be somebody that you can connect with. You can have a conversation and you feel comfortable with that conversation, and that it's not someone that's been asked to be your mentor, but someone that believes, or you and you and she get together and figure out through experience, through conversation, through interaction that this is the right mentor to work with, right? And so for me, it started not right away as I got into the business world, but soon thereafter, once I had the opportunity to interact with different people, I found the opportunity to connect with one of the vice presidents. It was, I hired originally into Shell Oil here in the United States, and I happened to connect with a vice president that happened to be outside of information technology. He actually was running the trading business, and we're doing a project for them, and got to connect with him, and he became a person that I could sit down and have a conversation. And what struck me the most, I wanted to walk in and have a conversation about, hey, here is what happened. What do you think? And he would always change the conversation to the future, sort of like a coach looking forward. And what are you going to do going forward? Not what you did before, right? And learn from what you did before, but always ask, what are you going to do going forward? And sort of challenge me to think about, how am I going to use what happened to improve going forward? And that was, to me, the most impactful aspect of having a mentor. Another aspect of a mentor is obviously the ability for them and you to open doors and give you an opportunity to sit in areas where you might not ever have the opportunity to do so. In other words, I was curious about the chemicals marketing business, right? And this person, my mentor, had connections in that particular area and allowed me to get involved and sit down and learn about it, even though it had nothing to do with the job that I was doing. It gave me insight into the business that I would have never had the opportunity before to interact with. So that's another aspect, in my view, of a mentor. It's first of all, find a mentor that you can connect with and have the ability to interact and have conversations that are comfortable, if you will, and uncomfortable, but then use that as a means to look ahead and question the future, and how are you going to adapt and adjust in order to improve upon what you're doing. That's my two cents there.
Oh, I agree, Yanni. I think that having that mutual relationship is so critical. John, Todd?
Well, from my perspective, I wouldn't be here without my mentors. I have them on speed dial and the ability to just ask the questions that you normally wouldn't be able to ask. I think what I learned years ago through the mentee-mentor relationship was a lot of times when mentees approach mentors, they want them to impart all of the knowledge that they've had the last 20-some years and give me a pill. What do I need to take? How many of these a day? And but there's always the saying, well, the grass is always greener, but you still have to mow it. It takes work, no matter where you are, what company you're in. And what I figured out in this mentor-mentee relationship is the obligation is more on the mentee to get out what they would like to than the mentor. So it took a lot of work for me to figure out how I can best utilize the mentor's experiences that would help me gain insights in the future. Once I figured that out, that this was my issue, not theirs, it's been wonderful. I have a number of mentors that are, fairly well-known operators in publicly traded companies and private equity that I call quite regularly and frequently and ask the questions that normally you wouldn't think that they've been asked or the experiences that they've had before, and they're more than willing to share their insights because it goes to the failures. They say, hey, I don't want you to step into a pothole that I stepped in before. So have you thought about this, this, and this? And so just don't have an agenda. Just be able to have a free flow conversation in those discussions. But the unique thing is, as a mentee, there's a little naivete to some of this, and that is perfectly fine. It's actually will make you very effective. Be naive and ask the questions and don't apologize for them. If you have the right mentor, they'll answer them for you honestly. And don't approach it as, oh, I'm going to use this as a platform to get promoted. Promotion comes with merit in capabilities and in delivering results. And I think the perspective you gain from your mentors is one that's pretty unique. I mean, when you go up in an airplane or a hot air balloon, the higher up you go, the more you see, and it's a different perspective. That was an understanding that those individuals imparted on me that I'm forever grateful for. I just spoke to one of my mentors on Friday night, and we had a 25-minute discussion. And I always go away from that energized with a different perspective. That's the key to unlocking value with a mentee and a mentor.
Great dialogue. And I especially like the idea of you still talking to your mentor. So you basically continue to think of that as a very important bridge, even after all the success that you've had in life. So it's a very important concept there. Todd?
I'll tell you, one thing that you get from a mentor that maybe you probably can't get anywhere else, maybe your family, is speaking truth. And sometimes the mentor has a unique perspective that you don't see. You may have a blind spot and you may not be able to acknowledge that I have an issue in this area that needs to be addressed. And what better way if you can develop that relationship to the point where they can come out and speak truth to you that you may need to hear. And I've had a combination of mentors both inside the businesses that I've been, and probably more importantly, outside the businesses, where there is no thing that ties us together. It's not part of a mentor program. But yet that's where I've got some of the largest value, because people don't have a vested stake in me. It's more of a personal relationship, and you develop that personal relationship over time that grows and it changes, because I need different things at different times. And as my career has developed, I really have different levels, but yet some of the same mentors have been with me through that. And if you think about what our roles are as senior executives, there's nothing more important we have than to invest in our staff, to get them prepared for the next level, whether that's a director level, a vice president level, or replacing one of us. Nothing is more important, and that's where we should be spending our time very consciously to make sure that happens. And I've actually had the opportunity in my career to mentor some people that have gone up through the ranks of starting with me, but then going on to different companies where they've achieved just high levels of success. And we still keep in touch today, and it's such a rewarding experience personally to see somebody reach that level that they wanted to operate. And it's also sad in a way when you'd like them to take over other roles and they take something different, but that's okay. That's part of the process of mentoring. And if we do it well, we're preparing that next generation in our organizations.
Oh, absolutely, Todd. Totally agree. You have to let them free, and you can't can't restrict their growth, because that actually goes just against that mentor-mentee concept completely. Hey, talking about this, I think when we look at a mentor and the kind of questions that get asked, we went through the pandemic last year. A lot of my clients, I was the head of Mega LT, like I said, manufacturing, energy utilities, travel, transportation, were very impacted by the pandemic and what the pandemic brought to us from a business perspective. One of the questions that our mentee asked me was really, how do I manage the balance between a business result that we are supposed to go after and still ensure empathy in decision-making process, right? Because that's so key. I was thinking that's a very important question for us to be looking at and thinking about. How do you balance a business result and empathy at the same time? And just to mix it up, I'll just start the reversed way this time. So let's go Todd first, and then go the other way around.
Sure. I think we've never really seen such a big shift right now in the way that we operate as a business. And if you look at how earlier in my career, the leadership style was very directive and very sometimes there were some words spoken and yelled at various times, and that type of climate is changing, where we have to look at the stakeholders, and it's not just the shareholders that are the stakeholders in the business. It is every single one of us in that business. It's the shareholder, certainly, you have to have a shareholder return, but to maintain a strong employee base and maintain those best employees, you have to create an environment that they feel comfortable in. And I think one of the things that we've really seen in areas where we have high turnover, typically in regions, where we create that team effort, where we can be empathetic and we can operate as a team and watch each other and help each other, especially during challenging times like this, that's when we have people retained. And that empathy goes right from the top, that if we care about all of our team members through the various challenges that we've had over the last year, and it shows, and we take care of people, that's when you're able to retain people at a different rate, because they know that you do care. And it's not just about every percentage, it's not just about the dollars. People will stick around in a job sometimes, and what the drivers are for leaving may not be what you think it is. And I think it's that empathetic view that we care about one another and we want to succeed together. And certainly in our company, our leadership has demonstrated that, I believe, and it's helped us through difficult times. So very different and very important to the future success of our business.
Sure. Totally understand that part, Todd.
Yeah, Ajay, I think empathy starts with an understanding and a listening and a seeking and a curiosity. Are you seeking to understand? And one of the things that is a wonderful part of we have a global business, and a lot of our associates are in Japan. We have thousands in the US and thousands in Europe. One of the unique aspects of our culture is it's what's called Gemba-based culture. Gemba is a term in Japan that is, you go to where the work is done. So you seek to understand. And so you'll see senior leaders in Japanese companies that are on the shop floor. We're with customers. This is just who we are as people leaders in our organization, where we seek to understand, which allows you to make a very thoughtful decision around the business. What it also allows you to do is you can be extremely empathetic because you've been there at the ground to understand at Gemba what is really going on, what is truly going on. You go into customer service, you sit there, you listen to the calls that are coming in, you listen to the responses that are being had, you understand the issues that they're dealing with. What that allows you to do is when you have to make tough decisions, though those individuals in the organization that may be the recipient of those tough decisions understand that that decision was made with a very thoughtful, empathetic, fact-based decision-making protocol. And so that's kind of the first part of that. And secondarily, it yields you to business results that are fact-based, very thoughtful, and there's a Gemba approach to that. Now, at the end of the day, we've got to deliver results, because that means we're serving our customers to the capabilities that we expected that we would. And that's where it matters, where you've got to always, making those tough decisions with empathy, with Gemba, with a Gemba-based fact approach in the customers that will allow us to serve more customers and deliver value to them. And so that's where, at the end of the day, that we try and strike the balance at PHC between both an empathetic decision-making protocol that's Gemba, grounded in Gemba facts, and of course that will deliver results.
And very interesting, John. I learned a new word, but it has a lot of meaning.
The technical meaning is where the work is done. Actually, that is actually the direct translation, and so it is a lot of times it's the differentiator, we believe, between effective executives and leaders and those that are not.
Absolutely, John. Yanni?
I was saying that I couldn't agree more with what John and Todd shared. And in my view, these two, business results and empathy, are not mutually exclusive. In other words, you can't have results without empathy, and you can't have empathy without results, right? And so it is fundamental, in my view, in everything that we do. As you engage your staff in, let's say, you're planning for the year, right? And you're setting goals. They have to be part of that conversation in order for those goals to be achieved. And the only way they're going to be part of that conversation is because you're empathetic about the situations they're finding themselves in. You have to understand what the challenges are, what the barriers are, and you have to put yourself in their shoes. I think the gamba word that John used there, it's a very well defined method by which I think you can go about doing this, is get yourself in the business and understanding where the work is being done, what the challenges are, what the barriers are, what are people faced with in order to be successful. And then, in my view, once you do that, you'll be able to not only remove the barriers, but also get the buy-in necessary for the people that you're relying on to get the results done. And so, to me, they're dependent on each other and very critical in regards to executing and having business results.
I agree, Yanni, and I think I want to latch onto that word Gemba again to what I'm going to ask next, because I think we all live in a world where diversity, inclusion is key drivers to organization success. At least I would say most organizations at a senior leadership level really say that those are driving goals at this point of time. One of the challenges that I've seen is actually execution, and that's different in different departments of the same organization. It's different within a company. It's definitely different from company to company. And that's where the Gemba, in my mind, at least, was very important to this next question that I was going to ask. That how do you try to further the cause of diversity and inclusion within the organization? How critical do you think of that as a success within the organization? And then, how do you really ensure that is something that happens across the organization? So, John, I'd get you to start first. You haven't started first. So let's get you started first.
Yeah. So first and foremost, at PHC, we're not nearly where we want to be in terms of having a diverse teams. We're about 7 years in. The company's been about 7 years in. I joined the company about less than a year ago. My personal belief is it's the lifeline to really unlocking value in the organization, both personally for associates and professionally in terms of how you unlock value to customers. Reason being is having diverse thinking in the organization. Well, I mean, there's lots of definitions. We're in 125 countries. There is the American definition of it. There's the European definition of it. There's the Japanese definition of it. There's diversity. And so you understand that you're never going to satisfy all the constituents. What we strive for is this really, how do we get competing views in a room that will drive better thinking and better decision outcomes? And my personal belief is you've got to have people from all walks of life, religious, gender, sexual orientation. All of that has to be in the room to help you unlock value. Again, we're not where we want to be, but if you think about this, and my wife and I have this discussion quite a bit, and I have 2 daughters, and I want them to have every opportunity and shot on goal you could imagine. Women make better decisions than men around risk. That is a fact. There's a book that was written called The Hour Between the Dog and the Wolf, and it looks at decision making in terms of traders. Actually, women make better, higher risk decisions than men. I know in this panel is full of men, and unfortunately, I understand that we were going to have one other panel lead. She was a woman. Listen, that's just that is a fact. And one of the things I think we're not understanding is that there are needs in the organization where you have to have competing views. The modern term for consensus is actually people putting their opinions in the forefront on the table that will allow the best decision to be made. The older term with consensus was everybody had to agree. We don't want agreement. And when you have people from different tribes, they're not going to agree. And tribalism is a technical term in some of diversity, some of the environments of diversity and inclusion. And it's about just being a better human being to build teams that are of individuals that don't look like you, they don't act like you, and they're in different social circles than you. And it's time that organizations start to emulate that. So.
No, absolutely, John. It's a target that we have to keep driving towards. Absolutely.
You bet.
Yanni?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with John in the conversation about being open to and always including diverse, all sorts of diverse, whether it's diversity of thought, diversity of gender, no matter what that diversity is, it's very critical. But the challenge is actually starting with yourself, right? You have to be part of the solution, if you will, and it's not about metrics and rolling those out and tracking those. They're important because they show progress. But if you don't practice what it is that you talk about, in my view, then that change doesn't occur. So as an individual, as a leader, as someone that has responsibility for a team or a business unit, as the leader of the whole company, you have to reflect on yourself and what you're doing, what you're practicing, and demonstrating and modeling that in order for the organization then to not only believe that there is commitment around diversity, inclusion, and belonging, but also enable the organization then to feel comfortable to bring forth opinions, observations, challenges that otherwise would not have happened or would not be surfacing because of that, right? And so I believe it's a matter of commitment at the individual level, having the tough conversations when they do need to happen. I don't profess to know and understand everything that goes on, hence empathy and having the ability to get into someone else's shoes and listen and really and truly understand what's going on. That is, in my view, very, very critical in making diversity, inclusion, and belonging a success in every company, in every business unit, in every team. And so you have to make the commitment yourself and demonstrate it and model it and include it in your everyday work.
Sure, totally. Agreed. Todd?
Well, Tronox operates across 6 continents, and we have a naturally diverse, geographically diverse population. And as we embark in our transformation program, one of the things that we're finding is if we spend the time to radically listen to how people are dealing with problems and the solutions that we have, we end up with a much stronger solution, because everybody solves these problems in different ways, some better than others. And if we spend the time to learn from one another, we end up with a far superior solution. I think there was a time in the world when a small group of people could look at a problem and design a solution and then roll it out. In today's world, it's just too complex. There are too many things going on that if we don't take the time to learn from one another what works and what doesn't work and evaluate that and listen, maybe not come to consensus, but maybe at least come to agreement to be able to move forward, then that's when we create a much stronger company as a result of it. And I think realizing the differences that we have and accepting those differences and spending that time to listen and make an informed decision with all those inputs just has helped us dramatically. I've been able to sit through a couple of the design sessions as we go through a global solutioning. By the way, is probably one of the hardest problems in a global organization is getting everybody on the phone at one time to go through it. But the value that you get from that is amazing to see how good the solution can be when you include a diverse group of people with different experiences. So I just think it's paramount to success going forward in this extremely complex world.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. I think, look, diversity inclusion is a very important topic at this point of time. And the beauty of this is that the companies which are implementing it right are able to actually get the best out of that, because there is a lot to gain from it, whether it's new ideas like you guys talked about, like in terms of the risk aversion that we're talking about, a better decision making. And I think all of that is true. It is something that we just need to make sure that is really part of our ethos. And I get your point, John. I don't like hosting an all-male panel as well. We just actually had a dropout at the last minute. So,
Yeah.
you definitely would have loved to have uh, the opinions come through as well. So, I think we are close to the top of the hour. We have very less time. So I was thinking of a minute of wrap up, but, in the interest of time, if you can just take 30 seconds each to really conclude your final thoughts on this. And this time around, we can go Yanni first. We haven't given him a chance to talk again first after the first 3 rounds.
Well, I wanted to take a second and recognize certainly my team and definitely share the fact that yes, I've been awarded this award, but it's only because of their work, their hard determination, dedication, and everything they've done. So I'm humbled and thankful for everything they've done over the last year and a half, considering all the challenges that we've been through. So my thanks and gratitude goes to them, and certainly HCL. Appreciate you guys and AJ hosting this, and thank you for sponsoring it.
Thank you. No, absolutely, Yanni. We totally recognize the effort that the teams put through, and totally realize that. So thanks for that.
Ajay, first and foremost, thank you to HCL and for recognizing the team through uncertain times. We were full of them last year, and when you have certain projects in an uncertain environment, it only exacerbates the potential risk of that. We appreciate HCL's partnership. We also appreciate the recognition. I mean, this is about this team. This is certainly not about me. I'm just here to accept it on behalf of them. And there are thousands of people behind me that deserve that recognition. And, it's just good that HCL's seen that, the awards, the Stevie Awards have seen that. And again, a sincere thank you.
Thanks, John. Thank you very much. Todd?
It's always tough going last. I'm going to follow the same form. The team that we have at Tronox is just second to none. And I think it's the team that really deserves the award, and I'm just so thrilled to be a part of it and a member of that team that can deliver at such a high level. And again, thank you to HCL. I think you've been a partner to us and has helped us through this difficult time. And together, we're making the progress that needs to be made, and we work as a team to make that happen. So thank you.
And thank you from my side to all of you.